Hi, everybody. I am Ari Engel, the Director of Creative Community for Peace. Thank you so much for joining us today. Once again, we have people joining us from all around the world, and we're excited to have you here. For everybody that may not know, Creative Community for Peace is an entertainment industry nonprofit organization comprised of many prominent members of the entertainment community who have come together to promote the arts as a means to peace. We are also one of the leading entertainment industry organizations combating anti-Semitism inside the entertainment community, as well as the leading organization countering the cultural boycott of Israel. For instance, we've been working with companies like Spotify and TikTok to ensure that their platforms do not have anti-Semitic content and do a better job of removing it. We've also provided support to artists such as Rihanna and Alicia Keys and Bon Jovi, when they've been faced with boycott pressure when they've booked trips to Israel. Through the years, actually to learn more about our work, please visit ccfpeace.com. That is ccfpeace.com or creativecommunityforpeace.com. We are a nonprofit, so we do rely on donations to do our important work. We have a fantastic panel event for you today, discussing the new feature film, Resistance. The film is the story of Marcel Marceau, then an aspiring Jewish actor who joined the French resistance to save the lives of thousands of children orphaned at the hands of the Nazis. For those of you who have not seen the film, I highly recommend it. It is a must-see. It's streaming on demand right now, and unfortunately, due to the coronavirus, it didn't get a wider theatrical release, but make sure you go on demand and you watch it. And if you haven't seen it already, I think after today's discussion, you're certainly going to want to watch it tonight. I want to thank IFC Films and Mean Streets Management for partnering with us on this event, and also the Dr. David M. Milch Foundation for sponsoring today's discussion. For all of those of you joining us on Zoom, there's a Q&A section. Please feel free to leave some questions in that section. We'll get to as many as possible, although we certainly can't get to them all, but we will try to get to as many as possible towards the end of the discussion. To briefly introduce our guests, first we have the star of the film, Jesse Eisenberg, who is an Academy Award nominated actor and acclaimed playwright and author. Jesse's film credits include Roger Dodger, Adventureland, Zombieland, The Social Network, Now You See Me, Now We See Him, Batman vs. Superman, and many, many more. Jesse has also written 4 plays, including The Spoils, which recently completed a box office record-breaking run on the West End. We also have the film's director with us today, Jonathan Jakubowicz, a Jew of Polish descent who is Venezuela's most celebrated filmmaker and writer, whose film Suestro Express was nominated for Best Foreign Language Film at the British Independent Film Awards and was a New York Times Critics' Pick in 2005. Jonathan also wrote and directed Ships of Hope, a documentary recounting the journey of Jewish refugees fleeing Nazi Europe to Venezuela. Other films of his include Hands of Stone, about the relationship between Panamanian boxer Roberto Duran and his trainer Ray Arcel, played by Robert De Niro. Finally, our moderator for the discussion today is David Suiza, who is the editor-in-chief and publisher of the Jewish Journal of Los Angeles. And with that, David, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm looking for myself here on the screen. Let's see. Start my video. All right. Thank you, everybody. Jesse, Jonathan, love the film. I'm a refugee myself from Morocco. Moved to Canada in the 60s. There's so much that I identified with in the film. But as I was seeing you, Jesse, in the film, I pretended that I was you, and I'm thinking, he's acting in the deepest, darkest moment in Jewish history. And I'm wondering, what does that do to an actor? I understand the professional angle, which is that, you know, you're an actor and you act. But at the same time, considering the subject matter, did this have any impact on you?
Yeah, it did. I mean, it was a completely unusual experience. A lot of movies kind of ask actors to do things that are actually in kind of like otherworldly atrocities, you know, traumas of, you know, like literal apocalyptic proportions. This wasn't that. This was something that felt very kind of immediate because we were filming in the locations where it actually happened. I lost family during the war, so it felt very personal. And then on the weekends, when you normally kind of come down from long days on a movie set of, heightened emotions, we were doing things like visiting the Dachau concentration camp or, meeting other people involved in this story in some peripheral way. And so, yeah, it definitely has a kind of impact in that it doesn't go away. It kind of, you're constantly reminded of the reality and the people behind the story. And so, yeah, I mean, it just makes it so that you don't turn it off. Not that we wanted to, because we were all kind of, indulging in what was a very kind of personal, in some ways, cathartic experience.
Well, of course, I grew up with Marcel Marceau. I really am in tune with what kind of a legend he was. Was that daunting to try to, learn how to mime? Because you were pretty good, Jesse.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So I grew up as the son of a birthday party clown. My mom used to wake us all up in the morning while she was tuning her guitar and painting her face like Marcel Marceau. And so it was kind of like, in my family, if, in some, at least fundamental, but kind of a cousin of miming. And in terms of the miming, I had this amazing choreographer who lives in actually lives in Los Angeles and works there. His name is Lauren Eric Salm, Salm. He's an amazing mime. Jonathan found him to coach me. He's also a kind of chronicler of Marcel's life. So he has books of, pictures that only he has. So I had a kind of two-pronged education. One was the practical craft of learning choreography, and the other was a more academic approach of learning the history of mime, of learning the history of Marceau. And yeah, it was just a kind of perfect experience of, preparing to do something for a role. Actors are kind of dilettantes. You dip in and out of little, kind of hobbies for movies and then never, attend to them again. And this was not that. I had like 9 months of training, and it was just, it was as fun as it was practical.
And your very last performance of Marceau in the film was so emotional. It wasn't sort of more the technical stuff that you had up front. It was more sort of the emotional side with the movement of your body and the emotion on your face. I think that was by design.
Yeah, exactly. So the true story is that, Marceau performed for the troops, about 5,000 of General Patton's troops at the end of the war. He after the war, Marceau became a translator for the American Army because he was good with languages. And when it was discovered that he has this skill, they asked him to perform. And so the movie really beautifully opens and closes with this performance he did at the end of the war for Patton's troops. And the choreography that I'm doing in this particular scene is kind of an almost modified rehashing of everything that you've seen in the movie, of him losing people close to him, of him signing up as a fighter, holding a gun for the first time and feeling overwhelmed, of losing people and having to continue to soldier on. And so it's the movie really shows how Marceau took his life experiences and kind of and how they manifested in these beautiful abstract performances.
Jonathan, before I saw the film, I was saying, I hope this is not going to be Life is Beautiful, because anytime you see the storyline, the one line, like they say, of Marcel Marceau entertaining kids to keep them joyful during this horrible moment, but you went in a whole other direction. You honored the darkness in the film.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real story, So it wasn't unnecessary to go any route, I think Life is Beautiful is a beautiful film, but this was faithful to the real story and to the horrors that they were experiencing, and we definitely didn't want to shy away and try to make it, a just joyous film. I think what the balance that we were trying to strike is finding hope in the middle of the world's deepest horror, and also about a guy who finds his own art by using his skills give children hope, or to calm children down, or to help them passage through the Alps. And that combination is what really got me from the beginning as soon as I heard about the story.
I found that in the film, there were these real moments of intensity. There was the conversation that he has with Emma, where she's burning with rage and, wants revenge. And he convinces her that we're here to save lives is even more important than revenge. So I think that was an incredible moment for me. And also when the Klaus Barbie asks Jesse, what should he do with his daughter to encourage her to become an artist? And then he just says, don't coerce her. And there was the image on the face, and you stayed on it for so long. And as if you shook up his whole worldview, because Nazism was all about coercion. So here he is, the most important thing in his life is his daughter. And you're now telling him that he needs to go in the complete opposite direction of what he's trained for. I thought for me, that was one of the highlights in the film. Did you have those intense moments in mind when you wrote it, Jonathan?
Yeah, thank you. There are two very different moments. I think the dialogue with Emma was definitely the essence of the movie. It's because at the end of the day, that is the question the movie asks itself and asks the audience. What is it resisting? Is it risking it all to, potentially die, killing your oppressors, or is it risking it all to save the future generation? And happily, Marcel and his entire group decided to do what was at hand, which was saving the orphans, serving the children, making sure that we survive as a people. And to me, that was the essence of it all. The dialogue with Barbie is in a way, it's the face-to-face between the villain and the hero. And to me, it was important because it's operating in different ways, because Marcel could also be talking about the Jews there. The more you try to push us, the more we move in the opposite direction. The more creative we get, and he could be talking about the resistance as well. And I thought it was an exciting moment to really get both characters to face each other, and to remind not only Barbie but the entire Nazi movement was the opposite of art, the opposite of creation. It was all about imposition, and to tell a military guy like that there is nothing creative that can come of what you're doing.
Wow.
Is very powerful, and it's a scene that in a way was developed in rehearsals. As I started working with Jesse and Matthias in Prague, Matthias, who plays Klaus Barbie, it was a scene that was not in the original script, and I was very happy when we shot it. We were all mind blown. Jesse was mind blown by how good Matthias was, and Matthias was mind blown by how good Jesse was in that scene. And it's a very simple moment, it's a very simple dialogue, but it's so powerful, and they say it all, I think, in their respective ways. And I was very grateful. And it's one of those experiences that always makes me feel that sometimes as a screenwriter, you're as good as your actors. That was definitely a moment that was created by my actors.
That was the highlight of the film for me. And then right after, he gets hit by his wife, who challenges him. How dare you, hurt a priest? How dare you go against God, And he's pretty shaken up. I want to go to the very beginning of the film, Jesse, where's the question that has been haunting Jews for thousands of years. Why do they hate us? And when the little daughter, who's about to see her parents being murdered, she asked that question. And in a way, for me, what I found that I loved about the film was it almost doesn't matter. What really matters is not to wallow in the question, but really to decide, what are we going to do about it, right? So this is what I found really interesting, Jesse, in the film, is that, you know, there were moments in the film where you do kind of get into it. And there was that scene in the truck, you know, like Jews are emancipated slaves. And there was kind of a really interesting scene as well. But at the end of the day, at the end of the film, what are we going to do is really the question that the film answered.
Yeah, and what was interesting too is that with regards to what you're saying is like we were doing the movie at the same time as there was the Tree of Life shooting in Pittsburgh, and you know, we were making a movie about, you know, something that occurred 70 years ago, or 80 years ago almost, and but it felt, you know, current, and so what you're saying seems right. You know, what is the kind of value of contemplating the reasons why? They're myriad, they're often in conflict, they're nonsensical, they're irrational, they're based on silly, often non-truths. So what's the end game? And so in the movie, the characters say the best way to resist that kind of hatred is to survive. And to your point, we were filming some of the movie was filmed in Munich, and which is like 20 minutes outside of Dachau, you know, one of the biggest concentration camps there. And I took my wife and 1-year-old son there on the weekend. You know, I thought it was okay to take a 1-year-old because I thought he would just be quiet and not know what was, of course, at 1 year old, not know what he was, where he was. And but what happened was a lot of the barracks are kind of paved over with grass. You know, grass is growing on the former barracks. And so my 1-year-old son, you know, thought of it like a park, and he was kind of running around and laughing, and I was chasing him to get him back. And, you know, I was panicked because I thought people would think I'm treating this solemn location disrespectfully. But kind of what ended up happening is, you know, people were smiling at him, and I had this amazing revelation that just mirrored the movie's revelation, which is that this is the best way to resist. You know, here is you know, a concentration camp where they tried to destroy, you know, my son's ancestors, and yet he's running around literally having the last laugh. And so you know, I think what you're saying is quite profound and addressed in the movie.
Yeah. Also, Jonathan, I think there's many different ways of resisting, you know, and you have the classic kind of activist. But the way the movie highlights resisting, because of the main star in the film, was creativity. So all the creativity that he had, and it was expressed in so many ways, right down to the moment where, you know, he puts a little beer in his mouth and then sees that one of the guys was a fire spitter, and then he uses that in a very kind of sharp, almost violent way. So here is a really creative person who's a clown. He's a comedian. He's got a real talent with art, so he can fake passports. I thought that that was very compelling. The idea that the best way to resist is through creativity. Creativity is the ultimate of life, really. It shows that you're at the highest level of survival.
Yeah, I mean, it's what moved me, because a lot of what you're mentioning is true. I mean, those are the things he did. You know, I mean, it's not me coming up with these ideas. You know, it's
Right.
me researching and gathering these events, and it was mind blowing to see how he genuinely put his art to work to in order to save children. And in many ways, not only did he use his art to save children, but he also found his art through the salvation of these children. Because at the beginning of the movie, you see this guy who doesn't know if he's a painter, doesn't know if he's an actor. You know, he's still trying to find his spot in his discipline. But through this journey, he truly understands what he can do without words and with pantomime, and that is how he becomes the greatest mime of all time. And his connection to the children, I think, is the essence to why his entire career he was able to connect with massive audiences, unlike any other mime in history.
You know, that's a fascinating thought. I hadn't thought of that, because we often hear that certain things in life are so intense that there's the cliche, there are no words. And the truth is, when 6 million people get murdered, there really are no words. And it's just fascinating to think that that may have influenced his career of a life with no words, which is what pantomiming is. So I think that's a really interesting point, Jonathan.
He literally says that in interviews, that he realized later in life that the silence of his art was in a way similar to the silence of the survivors of the concentration camps.
Mm.
And he just turned that silence into a way of expressing himself, and that's what's so unique about him.
Well, it would put a lot of us out of business because we talk all day long. And, you know, I have since the crazy pandemic started, the tragic moment, the theme I've done in my morning podcast is darkness and light, that I find I can't just settle in one or the other. I can't just look at the light, because I have to keep in mind the horror of the 70,000 plus people who've perished and the 33 million people who've lost their livelihoods. I have to keep that darkness in my mind at all times. And at the same time, there is the light that I saw in your movie, which is people rising up to the occasion, people who are on the front lines of the battle, and so many people kind of volunteering to bring food to the needy. And that's what I find is the light. And I found that the movie kind of really resonated with the times that we're in right now, which is really a kind of a dance, a clash between darkness and light.
Yeah, I think the fact that the movie celebrates civilian heroes in the middle of a war, I think really connects with the moment we're living right now, where our only potential heroes are civilians. You know, the doctors are our only hope. You cannot nuke the virus. You cannot bring a tank and fight the disease. You know, you can only bring a person who went to the university and prepare themselves to save you. And that, I think, is something that really connects with the movie, because they weren't soldiers. You know, Marcel is the most atypical war hero you can think of. It's a mime. And I think it was very inspiring for me to hear that people were connecting to the movie in a particularly special way because of what we are experiencing. Because obviously, when we were making the movie, nobody knew this was going to happen. But even though the movie, you know, every filmmaker would want it to be in theaters everywhere, I tend to think that in a strange way, the movie came out in the perfect moment when people truly needed to hear this message.
Well, you had one of the toughest assignments, which is to say something fresh and original about the Holocaust. I've been in the Jewish news business for decades, and I got to tell you, there is no subject that gets more attention, more press, more books, more articles, more conferences than the Holocaust. It is this unbelievably covered subject. And one of the things we talk about in the Jewish world of journalism is that some of it becomes stale because we've heard it before, right? And then here you come after hundreds of movies and documentaries have been made about the Holocaust, and you have the challenge of saying something new. And it must have been a daunting challenge. I guess you were blessed because you had an interesting story.
Yeah, I mean, I never thought I could make a movie about the Holocaust, you know, in many ways because of what you're saying, in other ways because it was too emotional for me, and because both my families were mostly killed during the Holocaust, so it was very personal to me. But this story felt, you know, that it was more and not about extermination, and there was something that I felt was unique about it and worth telling, and unlike the others, you know, and I do think that even though there are so many great movies and great books and histories about the Holocaust, there is unfortunately still hundreds, if not thousands, of incredible stories that have not been told. And while it's true that sometimes you can be alienated by how much information is on the subject, it is also true that if you talk to 16, 18-year-old kids, they have no idea about the Holocaust, you know, in percentage that would give you goosebumps, you know, and I think it's like 40% has never heard of Auschwitz, you know. I mean, it's really important that we keep telling the stories, and I felt this was unique enough and important enough for me to take on the enormous challenge of trying to say something new. And you know, whether we did or not, I think what matters is that we are able to move and perhaps have been reaching a different generation that didn't know about this event, and that will spark their curiosity to learn more.
Was it hard to film that last scene when they jump on the ridge?
Oh yeah, it was very hard. I mean, when you become a filmmaker, they tell you there's two things you should try to avoid. It's shooting with children and shooting in the snow. And we shot with children in the snow, and it was very tough. But you know what? It was towards the end of the shoot. We were a very oiled engine, and the kids were unbelievable. Most of the kids were Jewish kids from the Prague Jewish school, and their grandparents were also Holocaust survivors, so they really felt the story deeply, and it was very easy to work with them because of how engaged they were, and how they also developed a very close friendship with Jesse. And you know, there wasn't an easy day on this movie, but the forest and the cliff and all that stuff was definitely the hardest, because you combine a lot of emotion with a lot of technicality, because it's a stunt. You know, you have to rig the kids, you have to, you know, have a place for them to jump safely, and when you're working with kids, there is absolutely no risk you can take. We also had parkour kids, like kids who did parkour, who acted as doubles for some of them, which was very exciting, you know, because those kids could jump, you know, like no other stunt double could. But it was great. I mean, and I'm incredibly pleased when I see it, because it took a lot of effort.
That was an amazing last scene. We had no idea how they were going to be saved. Jesse, were there any scenes that really kind of stayed with you, some indelible moments during the shooting?
Yeah, unexpectedly so. You know, the actors who play my father, his name is Karl Markowitz. He's an Austrian. He's not a Jewish actor, but he's played a million Jewish characters, including in this movie, The Counterfeiters. And the actor who played my brother, Felix Moati. He's a Algerian. He's a he's a Tunisian. His family is Tunisian Jewish, but he grew up in Paris. And I had such a nice working relationship with them that the scenes ended up just becoming more resonant for me. Not that they weren't resonant in the script, but just for me in my off time, just more resonant, and thinking about the little kind of compromises we make with our family in general, and then put that in a kind of such a heightened way under such extreme duress and such horrible circumstances, and the little kind of approval we want from our older brother or our father, and how in these times of such crisis we kind of you know, risk our lives sometimes, be motivated by wanting that approval. In the scenes with the father, he has this secret desire to be an opera singer, but he's a butcher, and kind of is so dismissive of my creative impulses. We learn over the course of the movie that he is dismissive of that because he's worried that a career in the arts is going to be so unstable. We initially think it's just he's being a kind of, you know, repressive dad who just wants me to kind of just be more attentive to good, you know, a kind of more sustainable business. And yeah, these scenes just took on a different resonance for me as we filmed them, and as I thought about my relationships with my family, and how, you know, you look for approval in such, you know, seemingly petty ways, and how on a grand scale like this, about joining the resistance, about staying alive, about handling weapons, risking your life, are those same family relationships just kind of writ large.
What kind of reactions have you been getting from the film, from some of your family and friends?
Oh, well, you know, it's funny. I since the movie came out, I've been in. I'm in a small town in Indiana, but it's a university town, Bloomington, Indiana, and so the movie is just like the biggest hit, as you can imagine, here, because it's all kind of Jewish intellectuals in the Midwest, and so they anything that's like Jewish and on TV, everybody watches immediately. And you know, it's a big art school, Bloomington, and so you know, I had like the one of the world's best celloists. She lives on my block. She's a teacher at Jacobs School of Music, which is the best music school in the country for this particular subject. And, she told me, I'm using this movie in my class now because the way Marceau talks about his art is exactly with the kind of grace and seriousness that I'm trying to teach my students, and he's teaching kids, and that's what I'm doing. And so the reaction has just been unusually great. It's not because I'm not in New York City now, where people are kind of referencing movie jargon. It's people who are looking at it as a piece of history. I also I live down the block from Alvin Rosenfeld, who's the Holocaust scholar, and he's been a family friend of my wife's family for the last 50 years. And so I'm kind of getting he's been tracking the movie for years, and so it's a kind of unusual reaction. And I would say for Jews in the Midwest, we're not too far from Pittsburgh, where some people have lost family and friends at Tree of Life, our across the street neighbors specifically. The movie is just so special. And the fact that, I'm here in this town, makes it just that much more personal for them.
Jonathan, are you preparing yourself for all these invitations from universities across America and Holocaust studies, which is a huge thing here in America? So you have to prepare yourself. Yeah, you can't. I mean, it's what Jesse brought up is really interesting, because I could see this being part of curriculum.
With Jonathan, and also touch on, we were supposed to go to Saudi Arabia right now. With Jonathan, you could explain.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, we were invited to the Jeddah Film Festival. It was the first film festival in Saudi Arabia, and it was meant to be the first Holocaust film to screen in the Arab world in history. Obviously, the festival was postponed because of the epidemic, but we're hoping that it's going to be, brought back, and then eventually we'll go there. But obviously, it would be an honor for me to attend any Holocaust education institution. I mean, if the movie can help, bring this closer to any student, it's you can't ask for anything more exciting. It's such an important and difficult subject where so many great things have been said and done. It would be a terrific honor for me to make a contribution to that.
Well, my country of birth, Morocco, kind of broke the ice a few years ago, and they became the first Arab country to have a conference on the Holocaust. And it's fascinating that what you said about Saudi Arabia. I would imagine that Holocaust museums, the Museum of Tolerance, Simon Wiesenthal Center, and the one obviously the big one in DC in Yad Vashem, have any of them been in contact with you yet?
Yeah, we've done some Q&As already with some local Holocaust museums. I think the one in Washington is watching the movie right now, and we're probably going to end up doing something with them. I mean, it's been a little, hectic and uncontrolled because of what's going on. Everybody's out of their offices, and, there's some delays. But we were planning to do a screening with the Holocaust Museum and the Venezuelan Embassy, which is where I'm from. But everything will happen eventually, a little slower because of all this thing. But they have definitely reached out, and the ADL also reached out, and everybody's very, very excited with the film and are supporting it in any way they can.
Oh, I see this as a film that's got really a lot of legs. It'll go on for a long, long time. I mean, it's really timeless. The idea that hope is kind of oxygen for human beings. We cannot live without hope, no matter how bad things get. And I think this is really what the movie celebrates, in the deepest darkness of the Jewish people. You found hope, but not empty hope. You found like real hope. This is a real artist doing real things to save real children based on a real story. I think that's why the movie is going to really hang in for a very, very long time. I'd like to see as many screenings as possible throughout high schools and, all kinds of venues, really, because I think it's a wonderful kind of, opportunity, like you were saying, Jonathan, to teach the new generation, people the 40% who've never heard of Auschwitz. And this is a really interesting, original way, because I noticed what you did in the film is you had to balance the darkness and the light, and you didn't want to go too far in either direction. So you show the darkness, but the hope never goes away because Jesse pulls it forward at all times. He's the one that really, he's the representative of hope. And no matter what, although he loved Emma so much, he was not going to go along with her desire for revenge. And that kept the movie going right down until the very end, when you wrapped it all up in your performance of Marcel Marceau, which basically said there are no words that are needed. So that's why I think this movie is going to last for a long time. You must be proud of it, Jesse.
Oh yeah, it was really a special project. When we were doing that scene, the scene again that opens and closes the movie where Marceau is performing for Patton's troops. We were filming that in Nuremberg, in a arena that the Nazis built but didn't finish to hold rallies of scores of thousands of people. And it was just it was such an eerie thing because of the relationship between what we were doing and where we were doing it. And then I flew my parents out to come visit me to watch the scene because, again, my mother was a birthday party clown from my childhood. So she was kind of watching, my mom was watching her son do this clown performance, well, Marceau would balk at the term, but, a kind of, a performance that is let's say more sophisticated cousin of clowning. And my dad was watching it. My dad lost his family in Poland. My mom's family came to America first. And so I think for both my parents, it was just this very surreal moment. And so, yeah, the movie is, of course, more resonant than any kind of fictional film could be.
Now, Jonathan, Jesse does not have a French accent. How did you end up picking him?
Well, Jesse, the story of his mother and the fact that he grew up watching his mother paint her face in white is something that I learned when I was writing the script. And I also knew that he lost family in the Holocaust. And I've been a fan of Jesse for many, many years. And there is there was an element of the character at the beginning that I found very important, that he is a reluctant hero. He is not a guy who woke up that morning and said, I'm going to save the world. It's in a way the opposite. He's a guy who is completely immersed in his own brain and wants to, if anything, change the world via his art, and his ego. And, it was very important to find an actor that can truly portray an arc of a person who ends up discovering his art by renouncing his ego, which is usually the opposite of what artists do. And, Jesse is so good at that, at truly portraying characters who are geniuses and who are involved in their own head. And I thought it was very exciting to truly push Jesse in a completely different direction as the movie progresses and show the generous, genuine side of a human being that is, releasing all this ego. And I knew he was going to connect emotionally, and I wrote it thinking of him, and I knew the accent was secondary. At the end of the day, a lot of what this events of the movie that take place were spoken in Yiddish because the children were from Germany, and Marceau and his group of friends were from Strasbourg. The only common language they had with the kids was Yiddish. So if anything, this movie would have had to be done in Yiddish. But obviously that would have been complicated. But
Thank
the
you
accent,
for not
I
doing
thought,
that.
but the accent, I knew it was something that can be done. I mean, I've done accents in prior movies, so I know when actors commit to it, it can get done. And I think it's really more a taste. And Jesse goes between a little bit of French, a little bit of Yiddish accent in the movie, because I thought that straight up French accent can be distracting in a way, comical. And so that's why we didn't decide to go all the way there and also mix it up with a little bit of Yiddish.
Also, I think the thing that I find interesting with art does not come at you in a frontal way. What I love about art, it comes at you through the window. It's from the side. So although, he decided to nullify his ego, he didn't nullify his art. And the creativity that he brought to the activism, to the resistance, I think is what kept the movie really interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, please, Jonathan.
Yeah, I think what it was exciting is that his art suddenly had a purpose, and so it didn't come from ego. It came from the virtue, of being able to do something others cannot do in order to do good.
Yeah, and I think also, an artist, especially a comedian, likes a response. And when you started getting response from the kids, that scene with the candle, and even just getting them out of the truck, I think that kind of fed you. You said, hey, I'm enjoying this. I have an audience here. I have a purpose. And you saw that kind of really early on in the film, especially that scene from the truck.
Yeah, exactly. I had rehearsed the choreography for half a year or more before we were filming it, and it was kind of like this oftentimes arduous, unfun, experience of just doing something that you're not very good at, initially. And so when we were finally on set with these kids, who were obviously real kids who were reacting a lot of times like real kids, suddenly it had a purpose for me, because I was suddenly performing this stuff that I had rehearsed by rote, and getting this reaction. And it's exactly, I think, what Marceau experienced, obviously, with, an added sense of, pure terror. But the feeling was like, once this has an application, it changes the meaning of it. It changes the intent, and it becomes something that you're doing for somebody else, which doesn't undermine the purity of the art. It just reframes it. I always think of this as an actor because my wife works in poor schools in New York City, bringing arts education to underserved schools. And I always have trouble reconciling going in, talking and teaching the kids, because I think of my profession as a playwright and an actor in such kind of like pure, unadulterated terms. And it feels strange for me to go and kind of talk about it as this thing that anybody could do and to try to teach it. And it's always kind of trying to reconcile the work that my wife does, which has this immediately benevolent effect, and the work that I do, which has this kind of, which doesn't have this kind of, benevolent effect on the most vulnerable people in an immediate way. And I think that's what Marceau reconciles in the movie.
Yeah, it was an opportunity to really to find purpose in his life beyond just the satisfaction of doing his art. It gave art the purpose. Jonathan, where are you living right now? Are you quarantining? Where are you quarantining? You and the rest of the planet?
I live in Los Angeles, and
we're neighbors.
Yeah, I guess
I didn't
know you were in Los Angeles. Yeah, I've been in Los Angeles quarantining, and it's, hoping that it's gonna start opening soon, like everyone else. And it's been, I think, less horrible than most places, compared to New York or London or Madrid, but I think it's also easier for a writer to quarantine because I usually quarantine anyway. But yeah, I've been in LA.
How about you, Jesse? You're in Minnesota. Are you quarantining? How's that impacting your future roles?
Well, there are no future roles, for anything right now. I mean, I'm in Indiana, so we're in the Midwest. It's quiet here, by contrast, of course.
Now you're a playwright. You're a playwright.
Yeah.
So are you using this opportunity to write?
Yeah, but well, I'm actually recording this book I wrote for Audible, so I'm kind of in the I'm in the producing part of having written something already. But it's a in terms of having an idea for something, like it's the kind of thing I know that when this is over, not everybody is going to want to watch a story about a pandemic. So it's kind of like, but yet that's all anybody is thinking about right now. So I'm like, kind of feel a little, I don't have a good idea now. Luckily, my mother-in-law ran a domestic violence shelter here for 35 years. And so my wife and I are volunteering there safely in a way that doesn't, impact other people or put anybody in a vulnerable position. But we have something to do at least during the day.
Well, I can tell you as a journalist, there's nothing that's ever come close in my life, my professional career, as this story. This is by far the biggest story we've ever been involved with. And it's just really, there are no words to explain what we're going through right now. And because we're in the news business, we're constantly covering it. So when I have the opportunity to cover a movie like yours today, it gives me a break because it's 24/7 on the crisis, and the darkness and the light. It's coming, and there are, certain fortunate souls who still have an income and who did not get infected, and who have completely different concerns, than those who are not, who are on the wrong side, on the other side, who have been infected and who did lose their livelihoods. So I see really there's kind of two Americas right now. And in the first America, sometimes we can get caught up with ourselves and talk about boredom and stir crazy and cabin fever and even positive things like, trying to use this as an opportunity for growth, which is really a luxury that a lot of people don't have. And this darkness and light that we're going through is unlike anything I've ever seen. And we're not getting out of it for a while. And it's incredible that your movie, which kind of dances between darkness and light, came right at this time. And it so resonated. And what you're doing in Minnesota is you're injecting hope by going to this shelter where you're going. And this is what so many of us are trying to do. It's not enough for me to do my job. We need to feel that we can do something. And this is what's happening in America right now. So many of us don't want to give up. We don't want to wallow in the darkness. We need to feel that there's something. And, everybody's got a different skill. In the film, you had specific skills, but your brother in the film had also his own skill. And this is also what came across for me, was that we each have a gift. And you got to know what gift that is. So on that long rabbi sermon, I think we're going to see if we have questions from the audience. Let's see. Okay. All right. I don't see anything yet. They were supposed to text it to me. Anyhow, what's your next project, Jonathan?
Yeah, I see the questions here.
Oh, okay. I don't
like
see them.
25.
Oh my God. All right. So please pick the first one.
Could we get some family background from Jonathan? Do you see me while I read him, or do I need to
go ahead? No, it's fine. Yeah, we can see you. So the question is, do we have any family? Can we get some family background
from Jonathan? Yeah, both my parents were born in Poland right after the war. My grandparents survived the war. Most of their siblings and their parents were killed. And they, after the war, tried to make a living again in Poland, but quickly realized that wasn't possible. So they immigrated to Venezuela, and they made a living in Venezuela, and Venezuela was very friendly to Jews until Hugo Chavez came to power, and he wasn't so friendly, and everybody had to leave.
Well, actually, I see 20 questions here that I'd missed before. So
I just want to make sure you got them. Okay, perfect.
Okay, no, I got them. Well, here there are reports that General Patton was not sympathetic to Jews. Any insight into that, guys? Jonathan?
Well, what I read is that some of the treatment of the refugees by Patton's troops wasn't you know, the one you would hope, you know, and you know what I read is some testimonies that they were liberating the camps, they were liberating ghettos, and you know people were sick, people were dying of hunger, and the soldiers who had been through a war, you know, were not aid workers, were not really prepared to deal with that crisis in itself. So the crisis continued for a long time, and there are some quotes from Patton that were disappointing in the middle of that. I wouldn't say he had particular animosity towards Jews. I just think it sounded a little like, you know, more like American supremacy. Like, what do I care? You know, we came, we defeated the Nazis, let's go. You know, and but it, you know, there are certain things that I found in my research that were a bit troubling about Patton, for sure. And Ed Harris mentioned that as well when we shot the scene.
Well, I think it really worked that you had a real military man honoring an artist. Jesse, there's a question here for you. Has the film influenced your relationship with your connection with Judaism?
Yeah, I mean, I dropped out of Hebrew school when I was like 12 years old because I didn't want to have a bar mitzvah, because where I grew up, it was like having this absurd party, and it just, the whole thing was so disgusting to me. You know, we're just showing off and getting money. I just hated the whole thing. And so I dropped out right before the bar mitzvah. So I actually had a bar mitzvah officially when I was doing research for another movie where I played a Hasidic Jew. I was kind of going to this Hasidic temple, you know, and kind of just asking questions as like a secular Jew. And so they gave me a bar mitzvah. So that's when I was bar mitzvah. So I've had like a kind of unusual relationship with my own Jewish heritage through my work. This movie, because it's about an artist and because I'm older, have a son now, it was much more personal and much more kind of like, I don't know, it brought in my Jewish culture and history in a way that I just really loved, you know, because it told the story of artists and, you know, funny people and smart people, especially, you know, in and the personal connection I have to Marceau, which is that our families come from a very, very similar part of Poland. And so, yeah, I kind of had this, greater connection to a part of Jewish history and Jewish culture, especially during this traumatic time, that I felt a lot more of a kinship to.
Well, I have to say, there's something you guys did at the very end when the credits came on that touched me personally, because on my block every Friday afternoon, right before sundown, we sing Shalom Aleichem, the whole group of neighbors. I thought it was just so inspired to just sing Shalom Aleichem, you know, behind the credits. Jonathan, was that your inspiration? Where did that come from?
Yeah, I mean, the most incredible thing is that the kids you hear singing Shalom Aleichem are the kids from the movie, you know,
Right.
the actual kids you watch. There's something, when you work with children in Prague, they all play an instrument, they all know how to sing, you know, but when we were casting them, it was very hard to find kids that could sing Shalom Aleichem, and that's how we ended up in the Jewish school, and we asked them to sing Shalom Aleichem, and they all knew how to do it. The decision to put it at the end of the movie was actually from my sound designer, who's German, who had no idea what Shalom Aleichem was, and we were discussing what to put in the back in the credits, and he surprised me once when I got into the mixing stage, and he played it for me. You know, Stefan Busch is a phenomenal sound designer, non-Jewish, German, and that's how he thought the movie should end. And of course, when I heard it, you know, I felt the same thing you felt. It's just simply the right spot.
Well, that's a great little piece of trivia that a non-Jew kind of had that insight. And I thought it was just a really poignant way of ending the film with a melody and a song that celebrates the angels of peace as we prepare to enter the Shabbat. just kind of this timeless, holy moment that it was just really, really inspired. I think on that note, we promised you an hour and we're almost there, although we have 2 minutes for one more question. Oh, they want to know, what are you working on next? I think we already kind of worked on that. And Jonathan, why did you feel the need to add in the scene with the gay man being beaten, as opposed to perhaps him saying, we have a Jew in our midst?
Because Barbie became famous by dismantling the homosexuals networks in Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was important also because it's often tough to explain to people that every time minorities are being attacked or their intolerance towards minorities, we're all in the same boat.
Yes.
You know, and I thought it was when I learned that Barbie dedicated the beginning of his career to fight homosexuals, I thought it was a beautiful thing that I don't think I've seen in a movie about the Holocaust, how, you know, they were also against homosexuals and they also exterminated a ton of homosexuals. And it usually goes together, you know, and that's why when I see an anti-Semitic gay or an homophobic Jew, I'm always like, you don't realize that we are in the same team. You know, when they come for you, they're gonna come for me, and when they come for me, they're gonna come for you sooner or later. You know, it's the same people that hate us, and I thought it was an important part of Barbie's journey, and it belonged in the movie.
I'm glad we touched on this. I want to thank both of you, really, for creating this movie.
And
Go
before
ahead.
we go, I just sort of end on a slightly uplifting note, because this conversation was absolutely amazing. Just to get briefly, because everybody's stuck at home isolating, I just wanted to see what you guys are maybe watching, reading, or listening to right now. So Jesse, any recommendations of TV shows or films that you're watching that you recommend for other people to check out?
Yeah, actually, there's a friend of mine from IU, Bloomington here, is this director, Eliza Hittman. She has a new movie called Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, which is just a really brilliant movie, which is also streaming now.
Great. And Jonathan, what are you watching?
I just watched yesterday for the 5th time Uncut Gems. You know, I really love that movie, and if you haven't seen it, you should see it.
Love it.
Uncut Gems.
And David, what are you watching these days?
Oh, you don't want to know. What am I watching? Just finished. You really want to know?
Give us one thing.
Well, I love old movies. So last night I watched Sweet Smell of Success with Tony Curtis and Burt Lancaster, and now I'm watching A Face in the Crowd.
Got it. You gotta love the classics.
Yeah, I love old movies, but this I gotta say, Resistance really moved me, guys. I want to just personally thank you for creating this film, and it's going to move a lot of people, God willing.
Yeah, and I think everybody at home, if you have not seen it yet, obviously after the discussion, you know it's a must-see film. It's a powerful film. It's an impactful film, and it's a story that many of us never knew about. And really important film that it's out there. So I want to thank the both of you for making it, David for moderating this. I also want to thank the Dr. David M. Milch Foundation for sponsoring this event, and IFC Films and Mean Streets Management for helping put on this a panel today. Once again, do yourself a favor and go watch this film. You can find a link on our Facebook page, and you can find us at ccfpeace.com, or creativecommunityforpeace.com. Once again, we're a nonprofit organization, so we rely on donations. So we would love for you to, check out our website and consider giving. We know this is tough times for everyone. Also, please make sure to stay in touch. We have a number of amazing panel discussions coming up, such as this one on Wednesday, which Matthew just put on the screen, which is discussing coexistence through music, featuring the legendary David Broza and Palestinian artist Mira Awad. We hope you can join us then. We have a couple others coming up in the following week as well, one on anti-Semitism and one about comedy, because I think we all need to laugh a little bit more during this time. Once again, thank you, everybody. Please stay in touch, and we hope to see you soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.